these books 10, 20 years ago are going back and rereading them and are getting like a new lease on it, where it's like new perspective of like again, the classic example of the Thrawn trilogy. When I read this back in the 90s, it was great, but now that I'm rereading it again, it's just really dated. It doesn't hold up. And but also that could be a good thing where people again like with Crystal Star, I didn't give this a chance back in the 90s, but now that I'm reading it, I'm kind of seeing some of the better aspects of it. And then there's people who again, thanks to our efforts and or not exactly our efforts, not all of our efforts. I can't say like we're the only reason that people are joining in the EU, jumping into the EU, but we're getting a lot of people who pre 2014 had no idea about this and are now just getting into reading it, and we're getting their fresh
Yeah.
perspectives on these books without that like in sort of bias of, well, you have to hate the Crystal Star, you have to like the
Yes.
Heir of the Empire, and we're just getting their unfiltered, unbiased opinions of these books, and they're trickling in to the rest of the fandom, as well as the people who are going back and reading these over again, and they're like, yeah, you're making some good point. I hadn't seen this. So again, I don't think it's all necessarily a bad thing either. It's good that we can actually talk openly about these books, and I love that we can like have these discussions on like some of the books that were once considered like the sacred cows of the EU.
Totally. Totally agree. And one of the healthiest things I've seen, interestingly enough, is actually shout out to Alex Magnino, a younger EU fan with a YouTube channel. Go check him out, subscribe. Does a lot of good EU reviews, very positive, pro EU, really neat guy. He recently read, it might have been a reread in his case, but he just recently did a review of, I forget which volume of the Bounty Hunter Wars. A book which, by the way, in its day, always had kind of mixed, a series that had kind of a mixed view or whatever, right? But again, because like post 2014, we're supposed to be defensive of all things EU. Anyway, in his review, he hated it so much, he threw it against the wall, and and it and it's like, but what's genuine about that is he earned it. He read it or he reread it, he reviewed it. This is how he feels, right? He still loves the EU. He still wants to see it continued. He still has a positive voice in the fandom. But gosh darn it, he read that thing, he gave it a chance, and he hated it, and that's okay. In the same way that I also saw recently another shout out, I think was it Lance? Um, I think I went on his channel to talk about Crystal Star, and I can't remember now